Eric, we, again, like the overarching theme of the conversation is, and how you write on the Anthology of Balaji is, we're trying to grow to infinity. Humanity is trying to grow to infinity. And so here the question is, what I think the saying was, what you don't measure don't get, what you don't measure it not doesn't get progress, or what, there's just this saying, that says, I don't know if you probably know it, that says, if you don't measure something, it won't progress, or something like that.
Yeah.
I think
What gets measured gets managed is like a
exactly,
common one.
that's the one I was thinking about. Yeah.
Yeah.
So the question here is, because I also know that you write on it on the Anthology of Balaji, is, how should we measure progress when we're trying to build infinite? Is it progress in terms of, GDP? Is it progress? Would it mean in a, optimistic society? Would it be, happiness should be the way we should measure progress? I know that Balaji says life expectancy, but in your perspective, in the way forward, trying to build this massive idea which is infinite, how should we measure progress?
I think some can be measured, some can't. I think if we expand what we measure, we'll get better at that. And there's some interesting ideas for that. I think number of humans is actually like a really good metric. It's a little bit in contention. Like I think you'll find some naturalists or some environmentalists who are like, no, there's too many humans. I think that's such a stupid and dangerous way to think. It's a very self-loathing way to think, like of yourself and your species, right? And I have quite a different perspective on that. I think happiness is a good one. I think wealth is a good one, but it needs to be viewed broadly, like very, very long arc. I think David Deutsch. You keep referring to Infinity, so I hope if you haven't read that, it's on your list. The Beginning of Infinity by David Deutsch is an incredible book that Naval has talked a lot about, and there's a great podcast called Talkcast about breaking down that book, TOK. It really sets the frame of the fact that humans are at this interesting inflection point where we've created all of the beginning of the recipe that will let us grow towards infinity. We have some incredible technology. We have this theory of knowledge about like how to continue to learn new things and build new things, and that really there's no limit to what we can build, what we can learn. And as we learn more, we unlock new natural resources. Like there's all kinds of things that are useful to us now that did not used to be useful to us, and that can continue and continue and continue. So we can have humans, all over the solar system, all over the galaxy. Like we can expand consciousness, we can build new things, we can live, in space, underwater. There's all kinds of cool stuff that can happen. And the sort of turning inwards of like, oh, there's too many people, the technology's bad, we're ruining the environment. It's like, no, humanity is this beautiful gift. We are the only conscious beings that we are aware of. We are the universe, like looking at itself. And is a sunrise beautiful, or is it beautiful because we're here to observe the beauty of the sunrise and consider it beautiful? And if from that perspective, like, the more time you spend in nature, the more you appreciate, like, nature can be brutal and raw, and if humans disappeared tomorrow, a lot of things would still be just out there killing each other. And this sort of bizarre modern environmentalism that's like, no, we must like protect every natural space for its own sake, for nature to continue killing each other without our involvement is just like kind of bizarre, and believing that there should be less humanity and less consciousness, and that we should stop technological progress that's creating abundance and alleviating human suffering is so misguided. I think in 100 years, as we look back at that, it will seem like a totally insane sort of outlook on life, but we're still in the midst of it now, and so it feels very common. You talk to a lot of people with that view, and then you question them on it, and they don't even really know where they got it or why, and they don't believe it to a deep level. It's just been like instilled in us through the air, through the water that we've grown up in. But it leads to all kinds of bizarre thinking that doesn't orient us towards towards this growth towards infinity, which is so like the destination infinity doesn't necessarily matter. It's the steps along the way. It's the sense that every time we invest in a better technology, or we create a better way to do things, or we create a way to do more with less, that now more people can exist. Now more people can be safer, or be more well-fed, or be more well-watered. Like, we've actually decreased energy consumption. We should be drastically increasing it. Energy consumption is not bad. Just the fact that we are consuming energy in ways that harm the environment, that's bad. But we can invent ways to create energy harm the environment, like nuclear energy, solar. We just have gone in our own way ideologically from deploying that to its maximum usefulness. And we need to, if we were oriented towards infinity, we'd be appropriately oriented towards abundance in the short term, which is maximizes human flourishing, maximizes human well-being, maximizes happiness, maximizes generosity to our fellow humans. You know, if you are saying like, no, we can't have that incremental progress, okay, who are you going to take it away from? Like, who are you saying needs to stay in poverty? Or, you know, being anti-energy is being, or anti-progress is being pro-poverty. And it's coming from a place of privilege of being like, oh, I'm the one who escaped. I'm already fine. I have enough, so no one else should have any more. That's psychotic. But people who are psychotic don't tend to see it that way. And they're trying to alleviate the poverty in other ways instead of realizing that, you know, just investing in new technology and developing these things and deploying them and being like pursuing infinity creates abundance in the short term.
Wow.
I've probably answered way too many questions there, but you pulled us
through. No, that was wonderful. That was really amazing. I really appreciate it, because there's just so much there that I can pull off of. And there's this saying that I keep thinking about. You know, you mentioned people who are possessed, and I keep thinking that people don't possess ideologies. Ideologies possess people. They're not aware that they're being handled by, you know, they're being persuaded by something they don't really control. They don't have an idea about it. And I think that through conversations, I'm going to plug the name of my podcast, we can take away that ideology. At least even me, for example, before reading the Anthology of Balaji and getting deeper into nuclear, I was kind of possessed by the idea that nuclear is dangerous. I should be against it. And then every time I remember on dinners, every time the nuclear conversation came, I was the first one saying, no, Fukushima. And then, Fukushima. And then end of conversation. No one will discuss Fukushima. But like you say, it's just having that open mind. I don't know how it happened, but it was just these nudges of possibility of there's another perspective that we can discuss. And the perspective, you want to say something? Go ahead.
I've got a few interviews with nuclear experts on my podcast that were instrumental in sort of bringing me along, changing my mind, that I've sent to a number of people in you know, our parents' generation who have changed their mind on that and been like, oh yeah, that maybe there is something to that. You know, the technology's developed a lot, and Fukushima in particular was not a nuclear disaster. It was a natural disaster, and maybe undetermined if 0 or 1 people actually died from nuclear radiation in that disaster. But like, we have this mental image of it being like, oh my God, it was a catastrophe. Millions of people have died from our carbon-based like energy system that we use constantly. Like, nuclear is by far the safest thing that we have. So anyway, I've got my whole trail of thought there is like exists on my podcast. But yeah, don't be afraid to be that person at the dinner party and going like, well, actually, there's something to be said. Like, nuclear has come a long way. There's a lot of new changes. There's new developments. There's like, the waste has never harmed anybody. Like, there are many fewer disasters than people think. It's still the safest form of energy generation. It's the only one that, with the hope of like pushing us even further into these. So yeah, don't shy away from those conversations. And I think being brave enough to question some of those ideas that we just naturally came up with is very important.